Do you think there's any benefit to purchasing and using little dummy training rounds like these that you see in front of you right now? Is there any benefit to spending money on them and then using them when you go to the range and when you engage in practice sessions? Maybe that's a question you've been thinking about, and that's a question that I hope to answer in this video. It's a gear tester here, and I want to just talk a little bit about dummy rounds and how useful I have found them when it comes to training and when it comes to practicing with a defensive pistol, and how these little orange training rounds that you see here have been so useful to me when it comes to practicing and being prepared for malfunctions and practicing clearing and getting my defensive handguns back in the fight. You know, it's a funny thing. I find myself spending lots of money on ammunition because I enjoy shooting and because it's a fun experience and because it matters to me that I would be skilled when it comes to carrying a concealed weapon, because that's something I do on a day-to-day basis. But it's funny to me that I have neglected to purchase these little dummy rounds because I viewed them as expensive, because it's about $8 or $9 for 5 of them in many cases. And you can get them cheaper than that, but generally, you know, when they're right available on store shelves, it's about $8 or $9 for 5 of these little dummy rounds. And so I avoided getting them for a really long time. And I actually might never have gotten them, except that I attended a training course from Tactical Response the better part of a year ago. And during the first day of practice and exercises and training, Tactical Response gave us some of them to use and then allowed us to take them home with us. And over the last, 9-10 months, I have found these little plastic training rounds to be very useful in increasing my ability to respond effectively if and when my firearm has a malfunction or a stoppage. So, in order to use these dummy rounds, it's a very simple process. And what you're going to do is, when you get out to the range, you're simply going to load your magazines up with standard ammunition, regular live ammunition, and then every few rounds, or maybe just 1 or 2 in each magazine, you're going to install these little orange dummy rounds. And what that means is that as you fire the pistol, you're going to boom, 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 it's going to work, and then it's going to have a failure. You're going to pull the trigger, and nothing's going to happen. The slide's not going to lock back. It's just going to, in essence, simulate a round that has a bad primer or some other malfunction in the gun, which means you're going to need to tap it, you're going to need to rack the slide, and then you're going to reassess what's going on around you. And that may mean that you just start shooting again, or that may mean that the target's down, or any number of things in a real life scenario. But in the training situation, it gets you used to having to tap and rack your firearm and allows you to intentionally have malfunctions. And that's the benefit and usefulness of these little dummy rounds. If you engage in dry fire practice, okay, then that is making sure that your gun is empty and then cycling the action and pulling the trigger in order to practice trigger control and also manipulation of the firearm, you will find that these dummy rounds also come in handy. And that's because certain activities with your firearm need to be practiced with something going into the chamber and out of the chamber. And of course, if you're doing dry fire practice, that needs to not be a live round, right? For obvious reason. But you can get used to maybe cycling your action and not cycling it fully. Or maybe if you go to do something like running the sights off your belt to chamber around because you're practicing having a hand that's damaged or unusable, you may find that you're doing those actions as you practice them in a dry, non-live situation, but you're not fully getting the slide rack back. You're not actually being able to expel around or chamber around. And these dummy rounds will allow you, okay, to see that. Okay? See, I'm not getting it done, and there I had a little hang up. Boom, okay, and there you go. So it allows you to do some things in terms of practice. These dummy rounds allow you to achieve that in a way that practicing without anything in the gun will not. That's another way that I find these dummy rounds to be useful. I hope this video has proved interesting, thought-provoking, helpful as you've watched it and considered some of the uses for dummy rounds. and how you might incorporate them into your firearms training and practice, so you'll be better prepared to deal with malfunctions if they occur in a real-life scenario in your firearm. If you like this video, if you found what I've said about these dummy rounds to be useful or interesting, I would encourage you to subscribe to my channel for more quality video reviews on the topics of shooting, camping, and survival gear. I really cannot recommend the use of dummy rounds to you more than I already have in this video. But if you like this concept and this idea, I've got another product that I'd like you to think about, and that is the Blade Tech training barrels. They come for a number of different models of firearms, and you'll be able to find a link to the review that I did on this training barrel down below in the description of this video, because I found it to be very useful. What it does is it simply replaces your standard metal barrel in your firearm, and what it does is it increases the safety factor when you do things like dry fire practice, or when you're going to do some things that you'd like to practice and make sure that the gun cannot discharge. I hope that you take the information that I've shared with you in this video and that information translates into action. Hop online, go down to your local firearm store or sporting goods store, pay the $8 or $9, get 5 of these little training rounds in either 357 Magnum, 40 Smith & Wesson, 45, 9. Go get them and incorporate them into your training regiment, into your shooting regiment, whether that's dry fire practice or live fire practice on the range. This is the Gear Tester signing off. Do you think there's any benefit to purchasing and using little dummy training rounds like these that you see in front of you right now? Is there any benefit to spending money on them and then using them when you go to the range and when you engage in practice sessions? Maybe that's a question you've been thinking about, and that's a question that I hope to answer in this video. It's a Gear Tester here, and I want to just talk a little bit about dummy rounds and how useful I have found them when it comes to training and when it comes to practicing with a defensive pistol, and how these little orange training rounds that you see here